Well, hello there, and welcome back to 15-Minute Free Thinking with me, Carpo. I'm getting too used to that introduction. I'm going to have to figure out a new intro. I suppose if I was tech savvy and my computer wasn't a piece of junk, then I could make a nice, awesome intro with all kinds of cool sound effects, but you don't need all that shit, right? This is just real talk. And today, well, I wanted to talk about a lot of different things, but I'm going to have to stick to one subject. And I just made a video for YouTube, which was really about just humans just wanting to live our lives, and it was supposed to be short, and it ended up being way longer than I thought, as always. And it had to do with the way that we're driving our economy into the ground. And I don't ordinarily talk about the economy because it's not a topic that I'm really that interested in. Even though I have a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is like an 800-page book about the Federal Reserve, and I've read most of it. And then another one my wife got me called Capital by Thomas Piketty, and it was considered a pretty well-known book on capital and money, which I haven't read much into that one yet, but I am interested with how the economy works, and it's only because I want to be prepared if I ever need to A, take my money out of the bank, or B, turn my dollars into something else. And I think this is a topic that is really boring, and for most people has absolutely no bearing of interest. As long as they can continue to go to the ATM and get a few dollars out, hey, they're good to go. But if you look at the history of runs on banks, when the floor falls out, it falls out fast. So let's back up here to 2008. Now, we've had a lot of problems. This country has had several different depressions. I mean, I don't remember how many, but I believe close to a dozen or so, like smaller ones. But the Great Depression naturally was the worst one. But there were several smaller times when we had to, change up our system. For those who don't know, back during the Great Depression, part of how we pulled out was the United States made it illegal for anyone to own gold. Everyone was required by law, under penalty of jail time, to go down to your local office and turn in all of your gold for the going rate, because the government needed gold because the economy was bad. They, I believe, gave people, I think it was something like $15, $20 per ounce, if that. And as soon as all the gold had been turned in, as far as they knew, they went and turned the price of gold into $35 an ounce, basically doubling the value of the gold after it was given to them. What this did was, in turn, made people's dollars worth less, but also made the government appear to have more money. These tricks were continuously pulled until the 70s when, during the Nixon administration, they went off the gold standard. Well, they went off the gold standard before that, but to not get too deep into that, we stopped even printing change that was made out of real silver. As most people know, prior to 1965, quarters had at least a percentage of silver, as well as dimes did. And then in 1980, they even changed the penny after 82 to where it's not copper anymore, because the value of copper is worth twice what a penny is. Now, these are all signs of inflation, and inflation is caused by printing too much money. We were able to hang on by a thread until 2008. And this is where everything fell apart. The market that allowed 2008 to happen, that financial crisis, it was swept under the rug. You hardly even hear about it anymore. That money was given to Wall Street banks. Here we have a housing and mortgage crisis across the country. So instead of bailing out the homeowners or helping the people, they chose to bail out Wall Street banks who had made bad loans. Then they chose to take that money, give it to their CEOs, and even worse than that, they just continued to hold that money. There's a reason they call money currency, or cash flow. It's supposed to move, and when it stagnates, nothing happens. So the Fed gives trillions to Wall Street, and then they just hang on to it. And so what did they start doing? It was called quantitative easing. They start pumping out this money into the economy to try to make it look like things are going well. The problem is most of this goes to the corporations. And we've been hearing about trickle-down economics forever. It's a facade. It does not work. So these people ended up taking this money and using it to buy back their own stocks, to invest in risky companies, to make risky asset investments. The banks do not care whether the system falls apart. They're in it for their own benefit. So they pumped $2 trillion into the system in quantitative easing with no benefit to the average person. I believe it was Ben Bernanke that was the Fed chair at the time, or a member, but these people would justify it consistently. So after pumping all this money in and giving all of this money to Wall Street, over the next 10 years, from 2008 until 2018, these companies they basically do stock buybacks. And if you're not familiar with the stock buyback, it's when a company buys stock in their own to artificially inflate the price, and it's basically making it appear like they have more money than they do, and in the end, nobody's really benefiting. Society is not benefiting. The average person gets nothing out of this. It creates the illusion of progress with no real benefit. They spent over $6 trillion in stock buybacks. That kind of money is amazingly high and very difficult for the average person to grasp, for anyone to grasp. If you look at $1 trillion laid out in 20s in a simulation, you'll see what I mean. It's absolutely insane amount of money. And then everything was going so well, and then COVID hit. COVID led to massive sell-offs on Wall Street. Because of this, the Fed feared that everything was going to collapse. So it led to the Fed cutting interest rates to near 0%. And because of this, all of a sudden, hey, look, Wall Street was doing okay. We are in the midst of the greatest crisis that we've had in our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes. And everything is shut down. Businesses have to close. People are losing money, unable to go to school. And instead of the Fed, doing the right thing, they cut the interest rates to zero for, these banks and corporations, but they bailed out junk bonds and failing companies. They gave money to the airlines, some of them like Boeing, which were already having problems. It was a way for people and the lobbyists to finally get a taste of money, to say, look how bad we've been hammered by this. But who benefited from bailing out the airlines? Was it the employees that they claimed they needed to feed? And no, of course not. All this money went right back into the corporations. As someone said, it's like a no-lose casino. When you reward failures, what it does is it puts up a barrier to people. Basically, people will take any risk. People fail to actually take accountability and think things through before they make bad investments, and it leads to the same problems we have now. So like a no-lose casino, the airlines were able to just keep themselves flying, no pun intended. And because of this, the mentality is that it's a win at all costs, growth forever attitude for the United States. This is something that the Fed has shown consistently. And if you listen to their arrogant people that, work in the Fed, the ones that do speak to the media, they say, the people benefit, look at how well the people are doing. But they're completely ignoring the disparity of wealth, how much money has gone to the billionaires, how people like Bezos don't have to pay taxes, but they can double their wealth. So when the economy finally gets to the point where they're at the brink, it's either runaway inflation or a complete fallout of the value of the dollar. And I don't think most Americans can imagine what that would be like. But we should be aware of it. So what do you do about it? People ask, how do you prepare? Do you buy stocks, silver, gold? Obviously, stocks can fall. Gold and silver, I believe, are good assets, but most people who have silver and gold actually buy certificates, or, the average person does not invest in physical silver. But I think it would be at least something you could hang on to that might continue to hold value. But we just don't know. And I won't go into Bitcoin because this is my belief, and I don't want anybody to cringe and start typing out all their angry rants at me, but I don't believe in cryptocurrency. I don't think of it as a solution because I still believe it can be manipulated. And by the way it's being pushed now, I believe that it may have very well even been created by a government agency. I just don't know. There's something going on there that I'm suspicious about, but more than that, it's a volatility in the currency. Even though people have said it's a hedge against inflation or the US dollar collapsing, if it can lose that much money in a week or overnight, I'm a little reluctant to invest in it. It may be a solution in the long term, but we'll just have to ride that one out and see. But it may be a good option for some people. If you have enough to invest, then go for it. And for the people who made money on cryptocurrency, that's great. I have nothing against that, but it's not for me. I think the best thing we can invest in would be our own wisdom, knowledge about, and preparation for if something, were to fall out, how would we, continue to pay for things? And it would really be difficult to show up at the bank one day and have the ATM say, sorry, out of order, then go to another one and have them all say out of order. It's a very simple thing for them to do, and they've done it in Greece, they've done it elsewhere. Many countries have had to impose, let's put it this way, the banks hold less than 1% of the actual money that they claim to have at that bank. So if you were all to go to your one bank, local bank, to get your money out, you'd only 1% of the people, if that, would be able to get cash out. It's another part of the JIT society, the just-in-time society, where they deliver just enough to get by. And so it's not to panic anyone, but if people keep, massive assets in the bank, then that could be very risky during a chaotic time. So just be aware of that, and especially if you can only pull out a certain amount at a time. With that said, that's my rant about the Fed and the financial system. There's really only so much I can say about it. In Zimbabwe, they had $1 trillion bills, $100 billion bills. It was like $100 million to buy a dozen eggs. They inflated their money to such a ridiculous point that now it's just play money. And I have a stack of $50 billion bills, or maybe they're $5 billion. But these things can happen overnight, and as long as there's somebody holding the fort down, usually we can keep the dollar afloat, the U.S. dollar. But if that fails to be the case in the future, then people should be watching out for that, and don't trust the news to give you the facts on what's going on that one. Listen to the economists and try to get an idea, and we'll just hope for the best. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next.